You're watching Casually Baked, the podcast, home base for the canna curious. Thanks for tuning in.
It's high time. We had a high time together.
Settle in. It's time to get casually baked. John, thanks. No, now I'm going to give you a snap. John, thanks so much for having me out at Kings View Farms. I mean, you truly do have one of the most magnificent views I've seen in Humboldt.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, you know, when I was introduced to you and your farm, I thought it was so fascinating to know that someone was kind of living this back to the land 2.0 lifestyle. And so I was really hoping today that you could just tell us the story, like, you know, how you decided to come out here and how it all led to where we're sitting right now. And I'll if I have, you know, that's really broad because I've heard you tell the story a little bit and I didn't want to ask too many questions before because I want to do it now.
Yeah, it's funny. It wasn't really a decision to come out here as much as life just brought me this direction. And I met the right people at the right time, and everything kind of fell into place for me here. But I think I was telling you earlier, I came out, actually, I grew up in D.C., but I came out like in my early 20s to see The Dead in Berkeley, and they were playing shows at the Greek, and I was staying out there with some friends, and I met these people that had come down from Humboldt to see the shows, and they had the nicest marijuana I've ever smoked in my life. It was just like unbelievable. And they invited me to come up to their farms, and I did. And it was like Mecca. It was like the pilgrimage to Humboldt County. And this is like, 1985. And it was really cool. The people up here were like living the dream. I mean, they were in teepees, they're making their own buckskins, they're like farming, they're like no electricity, Volkswagen Beetles and Volvos, and they were just living the dream, And I idealized that, I guess. And then I went back to Berkeley and lived there for a while. And I'd come back and forth and see these guys. And one year I got the opportunity to help grow for somebody down in Dugan's Mill, which is near the Nonagon, that little community. And again, it was just like I was in heaven, as a young man, looking at these older guys who were like living off the land. And they were just like something to look up to, with their integrity and how they lived. And as fate would have it, that one particular year, the helicopters came in and took everything. And I was telling you back then, there was no cell phones around. So I had to drive out to Hartwood to use the payphone, which was like a 30-minute drive on a dirt road, a roll of quarters, and I was calling some friends in Berkeley and trying to figure out what my next move was after losing the crop. And I see this help wanted carpenter sign on the Hartwood bulletin board. And I went inside and asked for a job, and they gave it to me, and I moved in there.
So tell me a little bit about Hartwood, because that's where I'm staying.
Yeah.
And it is, it's called the Hartwood Sanctuary for a very good reason. I want to know more about it.
It was Hartwood Institute back then. It was a healing arts school, and back in the day, they didn't teach massage therapy in that many places in the country. There was like Esalen, Still Point back in Massachusetts. There was a few places that certified people for AMTA massage licenses, so you could work at a spa or a cruise ship or whatever. And so Hartwood was one of them. And on top of that, it was like a transformational therapy experiment of human, consciousness.
Yeah.
And they were doing some really cool alchemical hypnotherapy. They were doing inner child work. It was a very, very cool place to be at that time, late 80s, early 90s, and vital, like 120 people, probably like 80 students and equal number of staff and faculty living there in this big community. A lot of our own food was being grown. There was Native American studies. There was it was a really
cool
for a 25-year-old kid, it was like another slice of heaven. So I ended up being there for 3 years and doing their maintenance, fixing things, and met a lot of people in the community. We had this little morning yoga practice where people would come up, the growers or the other people, I don't want to call them all growers, but just the people that lived in the community would come up and, you'd get invited to a little trim job on a weekend or make a little money here and there. And you got to know some cool people. And so after my time there, I was like, I want to be here. I love this. This is my heart's calling to me to be here. And I just put it out to the universe that I wanted to find a place to put down roots. And I asked the guy in yoga class one day if he knew of any land for sale, and he said his brother had some for sale, just like that. So
I love the universe.
and yeah, and it just like
teary-eyed.
it was crazy. We went out and looked at this land. There's red tails flying around. It was incredible, and he offered it to me at this really low price by today's standards. And when I told him I had no money, he's just like, well, what can you do? And I said, I'll sell my old Toyota truck and I'll give you a couple $1,000. And he's like, fine, I'll take that and I'll carry the note. And boom, handshake deal. I had 120 acres at 27 years old.
That's so cool. And I'm getting teary-eyed because when I decided, I was like, okay, I'm good at this podcasting thing and this is what I'm going to do. And I randomly met a girl in San Francisco who was getting rid of this studio equipment and was like,
there you go.
She's like, I'll give you everything in the studio for $8,000. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I don't have $8,000. And she was like, well, I'll help you get it installed.
Yep.
And then you can pay me, how much can you pay me a month? And I was like, I can pay you, $500 something a month. And so then for 13 months, she let me pay out this equipment.
That's great.
And it was just
that's
like
the
one
universe
of the,
can provide. When you're open, when you line yourself up and get out of your own way, things open up like that.
Totally. Oh, you made my eyes all drippy. Oh, it's so good. So you made this amazing community for yourself here.
Yeah,
you were
I just tried to fit in with the community that was here, and then it evolved as it is, as people come and go. And there's a core of people that are still here. A lot of them came through Heartwood in some way or another. Others through just visiting or their own path that brought them here. But this is like some places. Like I have friends in Hawaii, and I know people that'll go to Hawaii with like a whole plan, and they've got their money and they get a house and they get a car and they get chewed up and spit out. And there's somebody that goes there for a 2-weekend, vacation, and they never leave. And so they get welcomed in, things open up. So it's like that here too. Some people come up here with big grand intentions and they're not here anymore. Yeah. And somebody came up for a weekend and they never left, and it's a cool community of people up here.
So tell me a little bit about what you've created here for yourself. Like, it's really magnificent. We'll get the grand tour later, and anyone watching the video version of the podcast, you'll be able to see all of this good stuff.
Let's see. Well,
because we're sitting inside a home that you built.
Yeah. This is every bit. It was an old barn when I got the place, and it was totally kind of falling apart. And there's animals living in it, and I added on here and there bits and pieces. This is a cool collaboration. A friend of mine who's a timber framer in Vermont came out one mud season in the spring, and we got this local timber from Tostin's, which is over in Bear Butte, and put up this addition. And each part of the house is kind of a different story of a different friend that came through and helped me knock out a roof or a dormer or something. And so it's all a collaboration, And I have my brothers up here too. I don't know if I mentioned that to you earlier, but when at 1990 when I got going here, I got my brother James came up and he moved in up here. And we, got him a little cabin, and then a piece of land came for sale next door, and we got it. And he moved over there and has his own place, and then another piece of land, and then another brother, and another piece of land. And next thing you know, we have this little Walton Mountain up here.
Oh my gosh.
And we all have our own little domains, and we kind of stay out of each other's way mostly, but
I think my sisters would like that.
Yeah.
We all have our own space. We can't see each other from our back porch.
Yeah.
But we're close enough that we could see each other every day if we wanted to.
Yeah. And we help each other out doing things a lot. And there's like that family community up here. A lot of the people I have up here, I've kind of like created relations with them, brothers and sisters and, aunts and uncles. And because we feel tight like that. And so my physical existence here with this house and the land is kind of just an expression of how I like to live. I like it open and I like it easy, not too much maintenance. And I could do a little more cleaning, I guess, but it's,
couldn't we all?
There's a place for the spiders and to hang out in the corners, I guess. But,
So we've got outside of this space, like, you are you are a legal cannabis farmer.
Yes.
Do you grow your own fruits and vegetables on the farm?
As much as I can. It's tough with the animals here. It's I can have a kale patch and I have some tomatoes and I can grow just about everything, and I do at times. Right now I'm fighting with the quail and the deer and everything else that wants to get in and eat the stuff.
Right.
Like right now the bears are after the apples, and so we grow what you can.
Yeah.
And I do.
Well, and too, then you also have really good neighbors and everybody trades stuff
and that's the cool
shares
thing.
at the market.
I bake bread, and so I trade bread for, corn and apples and tomatoes, and I have a friend that has cattle and I get beef from her, and so we do a little bit of bartering up here with stuff, and
which that sourdough is definitely bakery worthy.
Yeah.
It was delicious.
Well, yeah, I sell it at the markets when I'm in town, and yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about this back to the land 2.0 lifestyle. Like, if we're painting a picture of this for someone, because, I have some friends in Oakland and they talk about, I've purchased, 30 acres somewhere. I'm just trying to figure out what my exit strategy is. I'm going to go live off the grid. And in my head, I saw something very different than what I'm seeing here. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Well, this has had like 30 years to be polished.
Certainly,
when I first lived here, there was a little generator and a little battery and a little solar panel and funky wiring, and it was pretty rustic for a long time. I mean, I didn't have an indoor toilet until like 20 years ago, so it was. You start out that way, and then you kind of polish it. So back to the land, it depends on what you're moving, what your motives are. For me, it's always been food. I love cooking and preparation of food. I love growing food. I love preserving it. I love canning it. I love drying it. I love freezing it. I like making soups. I like making meals for people. And so for me, like my favorite thing about being back to the land, or the whole impetus, was to like have your own food supply chain. Not to be reliant on stores and having to truck stuff up the hill. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first thing I would do. Is I was building a little homestead. It was get my garden going, get my compost going, and start making food for yourself. Because that's the whole farm to table thing California's known for came from that. It came from people growing their own food and eating what was in season when they had it, and having gatherings of people to share. It's all about the gathering.
Absolutely, and I think community is such an important thing, especially when you live this far away from civilization. You have to have that closeness, that family unit. And so what kind of cannabis community are you a part of here? Like what's the, are the growers, is it something where you do help each other out, especially like during harvest? This morning I was getting coffee at the New Harris General Store, and there were 5 or 6 growers or farmers, standing around discussing kind of what kind of gossip was going around, what cars they might have seen on what roads.
Sheriff car coming up the hill.
Tell me a little bit about that community.
Well, there's the grapevine, you go to the store and you hear about, the sheriff convoy coming up the hill, or, somebody got ripped off, or, you hear all the local stuff, what's going on. And usually it's good news, like we're all excited, and we definitely, we share what we can, if my greenhouse wasn't so good this spring, a friend of mine will help me out with some extras that he has, and vice versa. And if we have some exceptionally good strains, we definitely like, hey, you got to try this, give somebody some clones or something. And, I think it's really like open source software here. It's like nobody's holding anything of a closed fist. We're all in this together, and it seems like we all help each other out. And the cannabis community isn't, to me, it's like we're just a community, and cannabis is part of our lifestyle up here. But as much as the fire department and the community markets and the schools and things like that.
That's a really, really good point, because cannabis is a huge piece of this community, or any of these communities in the Emerald Triangle.
It was kind of the original GoFundMe. It's like that's basically how we all got everything we have, is by funding ourselves through cannabis. Our fire departments, the Redwood Rural Health Center, KMUD, like everything here is donation based, and nobody has real jobs. So.
So all of the community services and support have all been created through this cannabis community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so cannabis is the backbone of, where we are here, especially, I don't know if you know the history of Emerald Count, Emerald Triangle, and this whole thing, but like, when the hippies were leaving the San Francisco area in the late 60s, moving up the communes because they thought the world was going to end, the Mansons and Altamont Speedway in Vietnam, and it was crazy. So they all moved up here, and they had these little communes, and these are the same people who go to India and Thailand and traveled the world as wanderers and seekers of things and religions, and they'd come back with hemp seeds sewn into their hems of their clothes and grow them in their gardens up here, and then they would breed them, and that's how all the cannabis that we have now, everything we know, is kind of like Johnny Appleseeded here in Mendo and Trinity and Humboldt counties, and especially I think right here in this little corner of the world. And yeah, it's an amazing thing.
Well, and so you said your first heroes, the people that inspired you, were people from this original movement.
The Nonagon, those folks that lived down on Dugan's Mill. Yeah, there's like, they were all so cool. They just like ran around like Tarzan wearing loincloths.
Yeah, tell me about when your first experience when you're showing up there for the first time. Like, what were you seeing and taking in?
The first night I landed there, I slept in some teepee out in the middle of a field, and in the morning I come out and there's like fog is misting around on the hills, and off in the distance I see these like long-haired people that are brown, tan, half naked, like out in their gardens, and I'm like, oh, where am I? What, have I gone back in time? This is really cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I got to Heartwood Sanctuary right whenever it was like after sunset, right before it gets dark. And they had said, try not to do that. It's hard to maneuver. We've got, I don't know how many acres, 200 acres or something like that. How many acres is?
It was 220 when they had the airstrip. I think they cut it off and chopped it into a few different pieces. But
I go down to the little store. I find the envelope with my name on it. There's not a key in it, but I'm like, key must be down where the place is. I don't have a flashlight, which they also recommended that you have. And it says in this paperwork, like you can drive your car down and unload your things, but we request that you stay in the parking lot. Well, I get to the gate and I can't get through the gate.
You're locked out.
And I told Claire probably 2 hours earlier, I'm like, I grew up out in the country in the middle of nowhere where at night it's just pitch black.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of the dark, and I'm not afraid of walking in the pitch black. Well, shortly after, I was walking about, I don't know, probably a mile down a windy dirt road looking for the lower dorms, and with all of my shit on me. And I was just like, how, like, what the fuck? Like,
they put you in the lower dorms?
Well, I mean, I chose something that was, well, yeah, because Casually Baked was footing the bill. Like,
you get one of the ensuite rooms?
No. I got the one that was by the kitchen, but I had a full bed, my own room. But still a little bit like, camping. I mean, glamping, I guess.
Well, you got the Heartwood experience.
But yeah, I got to the door and I didn't have a key. And so I was pretty crafty. I'm like, well, shit. Like, there is no phone service. I know no one. You literally are just out in the middle of nowhere. So luckily, Claire knows people or is able to help me. And so anyway, it was quite an adventure. So it made me definitely appreciate, like, living in a city and all the accommodations. Yeah. But when I woke up this morning, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm glad I woke up here. There was little deer just kind of walking around. Yeah. I passed a skunk last night on the walk. I was like, bro, listen, just you stay over there. I'll stay over here. There was a frog on my window. Like, you're just like really part of nature here. No,
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful place. Heartwood's beautiful out there. They call that the Palo Verde Ranch. That whole area was a subdivision back in the 70s. And there used to be this Dr. Ramsey from Eureka owned a cattle ranch there. It was dairy. And then it was sold. That property was sold to a group of developers called the Palo Verdes Group. And the Army Corps of Engineers was going to dam up the Eel River down in Alder Point. And this was going to be a giant lake. And this LA group bought that property and chopped it into like something like, I don't know, it was like over 140-acre parcels, built roads, and they're selling lakefront property, built the lodge, the airstrip, the pool, and then the plug got pulled on the dam project, and they went bankrupt, and so that land just sat there for years until in the late 70s, early 80s, they started selling it off, and that's when it was cheap, affordable land for hippies. It was like
Yeah,
Like
and I think somebody had
$200-300
told me
bucks an acre.
that there was a plot of land that had been parceled out and kind of flattened, taken care of or whatever, and then they went away, and so a bunch of growers just came and started growing on it.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
Is that another place, or is this the same one?
I think are you talking about Heartwood or the Palo Verde Ranch?
Well, yeah, maybe it's the Palo Verde Ranch.
I think something like that happened at Heartwood. Like at one point, the lodge and the resort area had been built, and then they all went belly up, and some people moved in and started just guerrilla growing.
Yeah, because that's what they told me why the gate was closed last night. They're like, so that
was
it's
Heartwood.
trimmer season, so it's like they like to sneak up here and use the sauna and the hot tub and the pool and stuff. And I'm like, growers can be like cockroaches where they're like, you cannot kill us. We will find a way. Like,
well, that experience you had of trying to find your key and get into your room. It's like you have to be a little bit MacGyver when you live up here and find workarounds because everything is a challenge and you have to be very inventive and creative, around figuring out how to get things done so far from amenities of the city. You can't just run to the store and get, you can, but like to drive to town to get a hose clamp or a fitting or something like that is so long and hard that you have to figure stuff out here and be resourceful. And it's a good lesson. Yeah.
Where I grew up, it was a 70-mile drive for like the quality groceries, like getting to your Safeway.
Right.
But like, the New Harris General Store, that was like 15 miles away from us. And it's one of those things if you have a plumbing problem or, something happens, like you don't get to pick up a phone and call somebody to come over and fix it. So Southern Engineering has done a lot for me. Yeah. Just learning those life skills.
For sure.
So tell me about, you said earlier that what makes you different, what makes Kingsview Farms different is that it really truly is the encompassment of this kind of lifestyle. You're like, I've been growing cannabis for 30 years.
That's what it's like.
Yeah. Come on. I've
only been growing since 2016.
Oh, yes. Well, then you're not as cool as you were when I thought you'd been growing for 30 years.
I can neither confirm nor deny those allegations.
Seriously. Yeah. The whole idea is that you're like, when you're here and you're in this magnificent space, you're going to grow quality cannabis. You learn how you're going to pick this up.
Absolutely.
But the thing that makes this different for you is just like the whole lifestyle.
Well, it's, when we were talking about this podcast and what it's going to be about and like and then other people asked me, like I was at Hall of Flowers yesterday and you're meeting all these cannabis growers all over the state and they're trying to create like what's unique, what do I do different? And they've got these buzzwords and they talk about stuff and, I don't even like to compare myself to them because it's not why I grow it. And it's not how it came to be for me to be growing it. It wasn't like I was trying to create this brand identity to my farm as a cannabis grower. Like cannabis was part of our culture. And for me growing up, it's something I always have an affinity to this plant. And so what makes my cannabis farm different is that I guess it's just, it's not that much different than the other ones around here. We all kind of have the same growing techniques. We share a lot of genetics. We all have our tips, on what to do with powdery mildew and how to handle stuff and our companion growing and farming mycorrhizas. We all kind of do that, up here in the Emerald Triangle. Now, compared to people in greenhouses and giant grows down in, Palm Desert, we're really different than that. And the one thing I'll just have to say is that it's the heart that we have behind it. I love this plant, it's sacred to me. And so that's one of the biggest things. I really believe this plant kind of picks up on energy. It's kind of empathic, right? And I think that, when you grow it with that kind of love and care, that when people smoke it or use it or eat it, however they're going to imbibe, they feel the difference, It's not fertilizer. It's not, that helps. But it's partly the sun and air. We got, there's Kings Peak. It's 20 miles away. We got air blowing in off the ocean over 5,000 miles. It's just clean and fresh. It makes landfall right here. It gives us these updrafts and down currents that help with the plants like air. They don't like stagnant. And so we just have this amazing aspect of south facing. We have the ocean air. We have the hot days, the cool nights. It's just like the perfect place to be growing this. And then the way we grow it, we try to keep it simple and, keep our carbon footprint as small as we can and try to grow it as sustainably as we can. We always have, like
Yeah.
back in the day, we had chicken shit and oyster shells, and that was it, and some mulch. And go out under an oak tree and find some leaves and crush them up and run them through a screen. And we'd make our own stuff. And the plants were amazing then. Like 30 years ago, the plants are just as awesome as they are now. I mean, they had that smell. They had that feeling when you smoked them, that irie feeling. It hasn't changed that much. We're reinventing the wheel of all these new amendments and fertilizers. I mean, they help for sure, but really, it's the love and intention of the person. Like they say, the best fertilizer a plant can have is the farmer's shadow. And it's all about being around your plant.
Yeah. Do you talk to your girls?
Yeah.
Do you tell them stories, or do you tell them how beautiful and smart they are and that they're going to grow up and make a lot of money?
There's certain plants that you just, especially like, now I'm kind of like trying to fit into the, the way it's being done with some light dep and rows of things. But like, there's still my old full season plants that are big old mamas out in these cages, and when you get up around them, and this time of year especially, and they're just glistening, and it's just something about them that, yeah, you want to talk to them. You're just like, yeah, go girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I talk to my friends' children and pets and, cannabis plants, flowers. One of my friends is a dahlia farmer. I walk through her field and talk to the flowers. I mean, most of the time I'm high, so I'm not sure. I'm like, people think I'm a crazy person, but I do. I'm like, we are all connected. Like we are sharing energy. And I do think that, having those beautiful intentions does make a difference.
That's the biggest difference. I mean, it's some of the stuff that's being grown, I'm not trying to diss anybody, but like it's when you're growing it as a widget, as a commodity, and it's just about, amounts of THC per square foot, and you have this whole business plan you're figuring out. And it's like the plant's not really being grown in the same way. It's like difference from getting you can get an organic hothouse tomato at Whole Foods, and you can go to a farmer's market and get a farmer's market tomato, and the farmer's market tomato is way better because the guy that's growing it is into it. He's not in a big greenhouse factory, and I think that's what it all comes down to with most of the people I know up here, all my friends, and it's like they grow this with love in their heart, and that's what makes everything about what we do here in Humboldt County, and especially in the Emerald Triangle, and especially in Palo Verde, New Harris.
Yeah.
Just completely different than everything else.
Yeah, it's so important to know your farmer. And, and frankly, as you're saying this, we talk about we're sitting on the porch. A few of us were enjoying a smoke before we started. And, talking about that farmed cannabis that's like, in a warehouse that's got the artificial light and, who has just a totally different upbringing than flower that's grown here. And, it's like you can have the exact same flower and it can make you feel completely different because of all of these factors.
Totally. If there's some like, tweaker growing your weed, you're gonna make you paranoid when you smoke it and full of anxiety. So like I was in Colorado for a little while, and I got into the legal market out there before California to test the waters, and I had a little grow that was in a warehouse, in town, and it was in a building that had other grows, and it was like, I don't know how many licenses were in that one giant warehouse, but at break time, like 10 o'clock, all these guys would come outside, and they were like all tatted and pierced, and I'm not making a judgment about that, but they were like smoking Marlboros and drinking Pepsis, and they just did have this demeanor of like not happy people, not happy with they could just as well be working at Taco Bell. Like they could care less. It was just a job, and, and they were just reporting to duty. And, I was thinking about like all the flower that came out of that. And, Colorado is mostly an indoor market because they don't really have good weather like we do, unless you're on the western slope or in Pueblo. But anyway, it's driven by the indoor market, and it's such bad stuff. I mean, it's just horrible stuff, and I feel bad for the people who have to smoke it. But the consumer hasn't we haven't educated the consumer yet about the importance of buying, sun-grown organic weed by good people. if you're
That's
just
one of my missions.
Me
I mean,
too.
I'm trying.
I'm trying to teach people like it's, hey, you want to get something good for your body. Like I think people, once they realize it's like palm oil or different things in food that you want to avoid because it's forcing the rain, you want to like support these farmers up here, and maybe you're gonna have to pay a little more than you would for something that's being grown mass production in a big warehouse in Watsonville. But you're gonna feel better, and it's gonna be better for you. And in the end, the carbon footprint, like again in Colorado, they have coal-fired electrical plants. They're strip mining Indian reservations in Wyoming and bringing the coal down to Denver and burning it, and it's like powering all these giant indoors and the HVAC and dehumidifiers, and like it's just horrible. It's a horrible
that feels
thing,
terrible,
and it's like it's the same Southern Cal and everywhere. I mean, it's growing it as nature intended, with the least amount of like additives and also the footprint, like trying to use less horton netting, trying to use less blow pots, trying to use less plastic, trying to do as much as you can on your end as a farmer to minimize what you're hauling up the hill and what you're hauling out of here to the dump, and trying to keep it as really as small as you can. And, the plants they're fine, they grow really well this way.
Yeah.
And
well, and with anything in life, it really is, when it comes down to the big things, it's about playing the long game. And, it's like, okay, how is this affecting me? How is this affecting my family, my community, and the greater environment as a whole? And, if you can feel good about all of those decisions along the way, you can really feel good about the life you're living. And it really does turn into this like really inspired life where it seems like doors and windows of opportunity just kind of open for you whenever you kind of can live in that flow and think about that, that greater whole.
That long game that you're speaking of, I mean, that's such an essential part of what's happening up here for us and the growers is that, this is our home. This is our land. We've been living here for years. We have families, generations. And, for us, this has been a way of life and a lifestyle where the market's being driven right now. And God bless you on this mission of, telling people about this. It's like so people are borrowing huge amounts of venture capital money, right? And then they're building a model of something that they can grow X number of pounds with. And then they're pitching this deck or portfolio to these people being like, look, we have a valuation of like, $10 million. Loan us more money to build it bigger or buy us out at a 10x multiplier. So this is the business plan that most of the cannabis industry is operating on. It's not the long play. It's not owning their own homes. They're creating valuation of something with somebody else's money to flip it to somebody even bigger. And it's such a short-sighted thing. It's business. It's how it's done. We're in America. But for us, we're like fighting for survival up here. I have so many friends that have thrown in the towel because they just can't make it through the compliance part of this to get a license. And it's so hard for a lot of the older folks, that just, when they moved up here, they never thought they'd have a desk job. They didn't think they'd have to like be filing forms with the government and dealing with them that way, and they just can't fathom it, and it's really sad because there's like a brain trust that we're losing of these old folks that have been up here since the beginning that just can't figure out how to make it all work, and so it's a little sad. And for the rest of us, we're trying to do our part to bring everyone along, and you got to talk somebody off the ledge now and then, because they're just
well, and it seems like these towns up here, if the cannabis community here dies, so do a lot of these towns.
They already are. Yeah, it's really a lot of stores are closing up or shutting down, and people just don't have the money to spend anymore, locally. And and a lot of the big businesses that are coming in that not so much into Humboldt County but into California, they're not keeping the money in the state. It's all going back to the shareholders. Yeah. And it's whatever. So do you want to support that? No. You want to like buy organic sun-grown flower from us up here.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Pay more for it, unfortunately, but it's going to be worth it in the long run for everybody,
Yeah, and like we said earlier, it's the, buying cannabis that was intentionally produced.
Yeah.
But then also, like you said, like, before you smoke, you set or consume in whatever way, you set your intention. Like, what do you want
That's
this
exactly
to
what
do
we're
for
talking
me?
about, how like in advertising, there's all these buzzwords about, this strain is calm and this strain is focus and this strain is active and this strain is sleep. And I'm like, actually you just you set an intention before you take it. You say what you want, you use the Santa Maria and you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you asked, and so it's important to have an intention and to use this plant, mindfully like that too. I mean, it's, there's disclaimers you see now in alcohol ads, use this with discretion, use this wisely.
Yeah, drink responsibly.
I think, cannabis is an amazing plant and people have had medical benefits from it. And it's just fun to use too, it's just fun to listen to a Cheech and Chong album, and crack up. Get a good laugh going. Somebody told me something a long time ago that I've always remembered about this plant, and she was calling it Santa Maria, and she said, it's very wise, and it's like a mother, and if you want, you can climb into her lap and she'll stroke your head and make you feel all better,
Mm-hmm.
and that's comfort, and then there's also this other side of her that's like super wise. And if you ask a question, and then take a smoke, you'll get guidance and wisdom.
Yeah. I need to be doing a little bit more of that lately.
So it's a balance. Have fun with it, take comfort in it, but use it wisely too.
Absolutely. And, like I told you, I microdose for anxiety and OCD pretty regularly throughout the day just to help keep myself normalized and functional and, and out of that monkey brain. But yeah, there are a lot of times when you have this like big decision to make, or you're like, I don't know what to do. Like what,
Yeah.
And that's something that I haven't, I do a lot of meditation, but like to just like ask the question, just put it out there, ask the question.
Or even ask what the question is, like if you don't know, sometimes you just need to, you're like, what am I looking for?
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes you don't. Sometimes it is hard to figure out exactly what the question is. Well, John, tell me, is there anything that you think that the audience should know or something that I didn't ask you that is important that you want to touch on?
God, I'm sure there's something I'll think later that I'm like, I should have said something about this. No, I just really appreciate you making the trip out here. We're way out in the middle of nowhere, and it's really cool when people come up and pay us a visit. And I really appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. And yeah, I just what do I want to say? Just have fun.
Yeah. Well, I tell people that it's like Christmas Eve for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting to walk through the flowers and
it's a great time of the year
and see what's happening. And everything's changing. Everything's in transition. There's so much hope. There's a lot of excitement, and to be able to share these voices of harvest and what it is like to be a farmer, and especially in this modern legal landscape, what it's like to be a farmer who's doing it right and who is maintaining this back to the land lifestyle. Like there's such a money grab right now.
Yeah, there is.
And so it's been very nice and peaceful and pleasant to be in a part of your world.
Thank you. Yeah. It's cool. Too bad you can't get to the farmers market in town today, because it is an amazing time of the year with all the vegetables coming in. In addition to the cannabis, there's amazing.
Which town?
In Garberville.
I was at that farmers market last Friday.
Okay. Yeah, it's 11 to 3 today. It's awesome. And there's a huge base of people in this community growing food as well as cannabis. And it's cool to come together with that. And
yes, I interviewed a few of the farmers last Friday for the Voices of Harvest series. And then I bought some cool ceramics from some guy for a weed jar.
Oh, cool. Put your weed in it.
Well, because I'm like, I like super like attractive things like, that are not just a glass jar, which of course, you don't want your cannabis in a clear glass jar. And, a lot of times when you get it from your farmer friends, it's just in a mason jar. So, you got to put it somewhere else to keep it safe.
Keep it dark.
Yeah. But anyway.
True.
Yeah. So I supported the Garberville market last week, so
Cool.
today I'm gonna head back up to Heartwood and get in the pool and the.
I mean, I guess one thing
Hot
I'd like to
tub.
say, one more last thing is, I want to, so the audience or whoever's listening to this stuff, I'd like everybody to do their own due diligence and really understand like where this is coming from, where your cannabis is coming from. Like, educate yourself about the plant and about its effects and about who's farming it, how they're farming it, and the practices that they're using, and, tell your friends and educate them, when you see somebody, hey, where are you getting that weed from?
Yeah.
Who, is it good? Is it, is it going to help you out? Is it going to help the planet out? Is it going to bring us all, some
Absolutely. Make
enjoyment?
being highly responsible a cool thing.
Yeah, vote with your dollars, where you get it from, who you buy it from, and what you do with it, and enjoy it, have fun with it, but be, respectful of yourself and others. And I don't know. I don't know what to say, because I have had this dilemma around, like, I grow this product and I love it, but some people might abuse it. And, I'm not, am I responsible for that? And I do feel like I am partly, and I just want people to all be okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe when those people are smoking your weed because it's got your aura around it, maybe it's the weed that helps them like have an aha moment instead.
Well, totally. And I put that intention into it back in the
Yeah.
spring when I first cracked seeds. I do a little prayer, burn some cedar for them, and soak them, and then get them going, and like kind of like start the year off with like a good intention that this is all for healing. And it's, whatever healing means. It could be fun for you. It could be checking out in front of the TV. It could be whatever,
Yeah.
But it's
What is your favorite strain that you've grown this season?
Well, let's see. I mean, there's a couple of favorites. I mean, one of the best flavors is this wedding cake that we're growing. It just has an amazing smell. The show winner was this Banana OG. We tested it at 29.8% THC for an outdoor crop. Was like
Wow.
super high.
Yeah.
And this lemon banana sherbet. And I should give a shout out to my buddy Dan over at Rebel Grown, who gave me the Emerald Cup winning Double OG Chem cuts to grow, and they came out really nice. So
Nice.
we've got some fun stuff
Well, I can't wait
on
to
the shelves.
go down and check it out.
Yeah, through Kingsview at Flocana. I think you'll find our jars and dispensaries that way.
Right on. So you're under the Flocana brand.
They're my distributor. And
Yes,
so,
but the Flocana jar, like if
Right.
we find those amber brown jars with Flocana, we can find the
and then there's a
Kingsview
little
Farms
label that goes
strain.
over the top that'll say Kingsview Farms, and through them, Willie's also picks them up. And
So if someone is looking to find one of your strains specifically, do they go to your website to do that? Do they go to the Flocana site? Like, how do you find
so
where
if
you
you're
are?
a distributor, licensed distributor, you can contact me through admin at Kingsview or the website, or hit me up at Instagram, and I can transfer legally pounds to you that you can either sit in your dispensary, however that goes. But for most people wanting to buy a few grams, you'd have to go to a dispensary.
But are there a list of dispensaries that you're in?
I don't
or
have
that on the
list, but
Flocana
the
site?
Flocana
Okay.
website, would have that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to get into more if anyone wants me.
Yeah, and do you know about Confident Cannabis?
No.
So that's look into that site. So this is it is a place where, say I really love your wedding cake, and your cannabis is on this site. It's kind of a place where people can buy. Like, you could have your strains up there, and a distributor or people, they can buy your products. But they do like the complete chemovar breakdown. So if I liked your wedding cake, I could find like, okay, is there some place in California that has the chemical makeup as similar
I see.
to this? And so you can find strains that are chemically very similar.
Matching the terpenes and the cannabinoids.
But that could be another place to shop your wares.
Man, I would love to get more exposure out there in the world, and then I'm just trying to keep my head above water with all the compliance work that I'm doing. It's so hard.
Well,
But
I'm doing an episode next week on those headaches of compliance for you guys.
yeah, who saw this coming? I mean, I swear 30 years ago, running around, back to the land, and now I'm like lawyers and computers and
you're like, well, how am I pushing
notarized
paper?
forms.
What's going on?
I know, pushing paper. I got a desk job. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, bless you and all of that.
Thank you.
Happy harvest to you.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks
This
again.
is my 30th harvest. I was telling you earlier. This on this land is 30th season, 30th harvest season. Pretty
That's
cool.
impressive.
It is. It's wild.
Yeah. OG.
OG.
All right. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.
Time together.
Casually Baked, the podcast, was created, recorded, and produced by yours truly. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of Arnav Gupta. La Osa is in the house capturing and editing the video version of the podcast, available on YouTube and channel 203 on Cannabis Club TV.